Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today we're taking a look at Insurgency Sandstorm's Nightfall update. It's currently on the game's community test server and adds night variations of all the available maps. It also adds some really authentic looking night vision scopes, goggles, attachments, and more. If you'd like to see more Insurgency based content, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, I've definitely been critical of Sandstorm in the past because of its massive performance issues and lack of polish, especially at launch. However, since then, the developers have added a ton of new content, made huge performance improvements, and fleshed out the game with new modes and weapons. These days, it's in a pretty good place overall. In some ways, I still think the game makes a few too many concessions for the sake of realism, but generally speaking, I think it's tough to beat as far as tactical shooters are concerned. So, throwing authentic night maps and gear into the mix certainly sweetens the deal. Right off the bat, the night vision goggles are incredibly realistic. Most people probably think night vision is some magic technology that gives you perfect vision in total darkness. In reality, unless you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for military-grade NVGs, the best you'll end up getting is some surplus monocle NVGs with a minimal field of view and output a very grainy image. Sandstorm's devs use the sliding scale of NVG quality as a balancing tool. Each item has a point cost, with better gear costing more. The new NVGs start pretty cheap with the basic monocle design and go up in cost until you hit the most expensive quad optic full color NVGs. Basically, the more expensive the NVGs, the wider your field of view, and the better they'll handle light and dark contrast. The light and dark contrast part is actually really critical. Now, in Sandstorm's co-op mode, the AI enemies are equipped with all sorts of eye-blasting munitions. At night, Molotov cocktails go from an avoidable annoyance to a blinding inferno of death. Enemy flashlights will take any Battlefield veteran back to the BF3 pre-patch flashlight days. Smoke grenades are like the mist from Silent Hill. Everything the AI throws at you that usually wouldn't be much of a hindrance on a daytime map turns into nightmare fuel with the Nightfall update. Now, the more expensive NVGs will certainly make this stuff more manageable. Flashlights and Molotovs won't be quite as blinding with the quad optic NVGs as they are with the single optic ones. But you're still going to have a tough time tracking enemies in all of the chaos. I think chaos is probably the best word to describe Nightfall. Sandstorm has always been an intense experience. The explosives are devastating to your ears and your health. The gunfire rattles your teeth, and in general, the game is a bit of a PTSD simulator. Nightfall amps all of that stuff up to a new level of extreme. Every close quarter firefight had me holding my breath, hoping my barrage of gunfire toward the bright light shooting back at me went in my favor. Often I'd have to wait for the dust to settle before I could confirm I had even gotten a kill, and that's assuming that I even knew where I was getting shot from. The limited field of view with the cheaper NVGs meant enemies were always surprising me, even when they were right in front of me. Now, unfortunately, I haven't yet had a chance to play PvP with the Nightfall update yet. I tried queuing up for a match, but it seems like either everyone is playing the co-op modes or the PvP isn't as active on CTE. Regardless though, I would certainly expect all the chaos and action to be ramped up even further against real players. The AI in Sandstorm is pretty respectable, but real players show no mercy and will use the most insane setups possible. I fully expect to be blinded by an entire team using IR flashlights when Nightfall launches. Now, speaking of the IR flashlight, let's dive into the new attachments. Basically, in addition to the standard flashlight and laser pointer, Nightfall adds IR variants that are only visible to the NVG scopes and night vision goggles. Probably the coolest thing though is that you can fully customize your loadout to suit your playstyle. And if you don't like how NVGs slow down your ADS time, you can either equip the night vision sight mode that uses your laser sight instead of the irons on your gun, or you can equip a night vision scope. And of course, you can even throw on a standard flashlight to blind people with. Take care with your loadout choices though, because if you use a standard flashlight with an NV scope, you won't be able to see anything through it. Now, I like that Sandstorm lets you experiment so much with the attachments. Call of Duty Modern Warfare's Realism NVG mode offers some pretty similar equipment, but the way it all interacts is very limited, and it's not as realistic as Sandstorm's gear. And it even lets you break the system by putting conflicting attachments on your weapon. The flashlight and NV scope combo I mentioned a second ago might sound broken since it blinds you through the scope, but the cool thing is that you can just toggle it off when you ADS. So not only can you see in the dark, but you can also blind enemy targets and make effective use of your night vision scope. However, one of the things that I'm still a bit on the fence about when it comes to Sandstorm is how weighty and slow everything seems to feel. Your character doesn't sprint so much as they casually jog. Mag dump reloads are quicker than standard reloads, but they still don't quite hold up to the speed that I think real operators are capable of. Aiming even with just a red dot sight on a standard assault rifle is still pretty slow by FPS standards. Jumping over stuff, changing stances, etc. all feels very sluggish, which gives the person playing defensively or camping a huge advantage. But at the same time, I do recognize how all of these impediments work in Sandstorm's favor. The game is, in a sense, trying to mimic real-life combat, not with simulating it necessarily, since you won't spend an entire game just camping in one spot, but having such fast TTK and slow reaction time does make you have to move through your environments and surroundings much more carefully, which is something that you would be doing in real life as well. Now that said, if you're willing to trade a little bit of your stopping power for speed, SMGs do offer a pretty snappy experience compared to assault rifles. They ADS and just generally handle a lot faster than other weapons at the expense of taking a few extra bullets to kill. Nightfall adds a few new weapons to the Breacher class, which is the class that can use SMGs. The new weapons are a mix of historical and modern firearms. On the modern side, there's the AS Val and the Honey Badger, both of which have integrated suppressors. And on the historical side, there's the Sterling, Grease Gun, and the Well Rod pistol. It's kind of funny to see the Grease Gun in Sandstorm, considering it was one of the more recent additions to Battlefield 5. In Sandstorm, it's a pretty low-powered SMG, but it still packs a mean punch. And it's always funny seeing a World War II era weapon decked out with tons of modern night vision gear. Overall, I'd say that the Nightfall update is a massive win for Sandstorm players. It adds some much needed variety to the feel of the maps, while also complementing the core gameplay with a more hectic and intense experience. The night vision gadgets really open up the door to all kinds of fun loadouts and experimentation, while making the otherwise insanely dark night maps playable. And if it wasn't for all the robust night vision gear, these night variants would feel like overly punishing, poorly lit environments. Even with a flashlight, navigation and spotting enemies is a real challenge. But while using NVGs and getting a few rounds under my belt, everything kind of fell into place. Nightfall is one of those updates where a lot of things have to work together in harmony for it to be a positive experience, and I think that they nailed all of those elements. Naturally, there's a few things that I'd like to see tweaked or added. Many of the weapon optics have a sight picture that is too bright to work well with NVGs. Having the ability to adjust the sight picture brightness would add some much needed clarity. Likewise, being able to toggle the sight picture on and off would also add to the immersion as well. Probably the biggest tweak I'd like to see is a hold to toggle option for laser sights and flashlights. Press to toggle is fine if you have a setup that doesn't require manual interaction to work properly, but that flashlight plus night vision scope combo that I mentioned earlier, being able to hold a button to disable the flashlight temporarily, would smooth out the combat flow. I constantly had to toggle my flashlight when surprised, which kind of slowed me down a little. Now, something I think that is sorely lacking from the Nightfall update is the IR optics. Aside from the laser sights, all the new gear is NV. It would be great to have some IR or even FLIR scopes and goggles. It'd also be cool to have weapon scopes with switchable modes. An IR NV combo scope or flip down optics would be amazing. There's also a few pipe dream things that I think would be cool if the devs considered. HDR support would be a massive upgrade to the game's visuals, considering how high contrast the night mode is. In HDR, flashlights and the other super bright light sources actually appear super bright light sources instead of just kind of a bright spot on the scene. HDR would up Sandstorm's immersion a ton and give the night maps a sense of vibrancy and realism that I think SDR struggles to display. Now, one of the game's continued sore spots is probably the variety of voice acting available in the game. It sounds like they only had a handful of people to do all the voices, so in a firefight, you'll often hear an insurgent that sounds a lot like an operator, but with a Middle Eastern twang in their voice. It would certainly be awesome if the devs could bring in some new voice actors and flesh out both factions to make all the players and AI in each team sound distinct from one another. If you're interested in checking out Nightfall, it's currently available on the game's CTE client. Unfortunately, matchmaking has been disabled as of making this video, but you can still play offline with bots on all the available maps and mods. As for console players, Sandstorm is dropping in a couple of months on August 25th. I'm assuming Nightfall will be available at launch, but we're still a few days or maybe even weeks away from it launching properly on PC, so I can't be sure. And that wraps it up for today's video. As always guys, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.